Hopefully nothing else will happen.
Hello, BookTube. Well, as you can see, I have a guest once again.
Hello, BookTube.
This is my old frenemy Deb from the wilds of
Hello.
Maine. We like to get together for Manatee Mondays, whenever that happens to be,
Right.
and we break down our kvetching in three categories: my aches and pains, my stories, and my books. But Deb has a disturbing change in the pattern.
I want to shake it up today. Well, first, let me say thank you to everyone that gave me recommendations from the last video of things that might break me out of my reading slump. I really appreciate it. So, okay, we can.
Also, as long as you're thanking people, can I excoriate them for all of the "Oh, we love Deb" messages?
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead. Go
Eyes
ahead.
on the prize.
But
She doesn't matter.
BookTube, I love you more than Steve loves you. So, just keep that
That's
in
not a
mind.
hard bar to collide. You're not the one who's sending yourself to the poorhouse by mailing books to them all.
You can you can tell just by how we treat you. Yeah. All right, continue.
So, Deb wants to change up our pattern because apparently a story is bothering her so much that she wants to go first. I don't know what this is. We
Yeah.
don't confer ahead of time because we don't like talking to each other.
Yeah, this is my story. So as you can see, I'm out in the backyard, off the porch, and just right before this meeting started, I decided to come out back here and set up my computer, set it up so that I could be ready to go. And it's rained a lot. We can say that it's rained a lot this summer and fall and spring, and although we've had a few good days in a row where it hasn't rained. But there was um, a basin of water just out here on our porch. On I think it was on the ground. Yeah, it was on the ground right next to the stairs leading up to the porch. And I happened to look in and saw a drowned rodent, a little mouse. And then that upset me because I I I like animals. I like rodents. The thought of a rodent drowning in a bucket of water right near our porch was very upsetting. But then I looked again, and there were two little mice. And one of them was younger than the other one. One was probably a teenage mouse. And so that has just thrown me. So that is out, that crowing is in my backyard. Um, so I just wanted to say, BookTube, I'm a little upset by that. So it's up to Steve to make me feel a little better, because I found that very upsetting, and I keep thinking that if only maybe after the rain I had come out and dumped the water out of that little pan, um, then there would be two mice that aren't dead.
I don't think it's your fault.
Well,
I mean, mice that can't avoid drowning in a gigantic pan of water. It's not like it caught them by surprise. They
well,
had to,
somehow they no, but somehow they fell into it, and I'm sure could not get back out.
hmm.
I don't know if they were going after the water. I don't know how they fell into it, to be honest.
Mm.
Hey, I'm trying to do something here. Um, but yeah, all summer long I've been emptying it out because I didn't want mosquitoes to breed in it. And crow, shush.
Why? I think I sent you pictures of something similar that happened to me months and months ago. I found it poured rain just in buckets one night, and then when it stopped, I took the bean out for a walk, and we found a mouse on the sidewalk, uh, stunned but still alive. So I think it had fallen off. There's a wall right there that's eye height to me. I think the mouse probably fell off that and was badly stunned. And I brought him here, put him in a box on a bunch of paper towels, gave him food and warmth, gave him a chance to recover, and he did. He did. I walked him back
And
up.
then the bean killed him.
No, no, she didn't know he was there.
Yeah.
He was in. I took one of the box sets of books that I have and dumped the books out. I put him in there on a bedding of paper towels, so she didn't know that he was there at all. Uh, but I guess if you're starting with your story, I should start with my story too.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, my story is not. It's not tragic. It might even be positive. Maybe it will make you feel a little better. I don't know if you saw the news, but the FTC has filed an anti-monopoly lawsuit against Amazon on behalf of
Yeah.
like 17 states. They've all come together to say Amazon's business practices are unethical. They are squelching competition unethically. They are hurting the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
I read it in the New York Times, but other newspapers have picked it up since then, and everybody is going with the idea that this is the beginning of the end, that this is the Ma Bell moment for Amazon,
Really
when finally
interesting.
a gigantic monopoly is brought to heel. I don't know exactly what I feel about that. Uh,
I I don't know either because on one hand, if I were still in Boston, I'd be like, "Yay, good!" But up here in the boonies, or a little more of the boonies, and where I can't leave the compound, um, Amazon is almost a safe way to get stuff.
yeah,
Whereas if you're going to other websites, and a lot of shopping here has to be you get a ride out to Walmart, and of course I don't like Walmart either for the same
right,
reasons, or you order over the internet, and then you have to kind of take your chances, like, is this an ethical website?
yeah.
Is 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 my information going to, my personal information going to be hacked into or leaked or used in a way I don't want it to?
Yeah, that's the devil's bargain with Amazon, is that we
um
know how bad they are, but they are lightning fast. They're incredibly convenient.
and there's a sense of safety, like, I suppose somebody could hack into Amazon and get my credit card numbers or whatever, but it's far less likely to happen to Amazon as maybe a company without as much money behind it
Right,
to ensure that safety, or a company that's just set up to scam people.
right.
you know so I do
But I
have
don't.
kind of now a more unsure idea of what I think about that news.
What I don't understand is why Amazon would invite this. Once a case, once the FTC is involved, they could stand to lose a lot. And I don't know why they would invite that when they make what, $17.8 billion in profit every year. I would think that when you're in that position, you no longer need to cut the knees out of the mom and pop competition. You can just let it happen, and
Right.
and and still you'll be making maybe not $17.8 million, $1 billion in profit, but maybe $13 billion in profit. That's not enough profit.
Well, I mean, definitely someone needs to step in terms of worker rights and safety.
Yeah, although I don't think that's what this is about at all. That wouldn't be the
um
FTC, I don't think. This is about,
more the monopoly aspect.
right. We've got uh, someone has paid for the privilege of a do-it-yourself, build your own hammock DIY book. You also have a build it yourself DIY backyard hammock book, and yours is just shadow listed. No one can find it unless they know specifically what to look for, specifically to boost the other book. That's not fair. That's not a fair trade practice. If you're introducing algorithms that depress the results of a search, then you're rigging the game. And I don't know why Amazon would risk doing that for nickels and dimes. I don't get that. I'd be very
Well,
interested
see,
to see how this goes on. I'd be very interested to see what happens. I'm
in the
assuming.
area in the area I am, small business has been driven out, but it's been driven out by Walmart.
Yeah, well, like you said, Walmart and Amazon, sort of the
Yeah,
same kind of
yeah.
rapacious invader species. That's the bean in the background. She's very happy that the rain has moved on. It's
I can
just,
barely see her just because of the light situation.
It's been
I mean,
days.
your big pale face is very easy to see, but
Dates going on
further
here.
back into your room is a little more difficult.
I don't think I think we're going to have clear weather for the next 4 or 5 days. So that would be great. It'd be
Yeah.
great if that happened. So she would.
Well, and I'm going to make sure all the buckets in my backyard, if they're still in the backyard, are turned upside down.
Well, they should be gone anyway, right? Like you say, that's where mosquitoes breed.
Right.
Definitely want to
Yeah.
avoid them.
But well, see, I can push that out as information, but it doesn't mean my mother's going to absorb it and do things differently. So
You never
it's
know.
really
If you
my
have mosquitoes,
responsibility to make sure these buckets are not um, well, and I'm not even sure why we have buckets around, but you're in the middle of doing some gardening or something, and then you go inside and then you don't come back out, and then it rains for a week and a half, that kind of thing. So that's what's going on.
so can we move backwards in our
Yes,
rotisserie here to your
to
aches
our,
and pains?
our aches and pains.
Your aches and pain this time around.
My aches and pains are the same as they always are. Allergies, arthritis, all those aches and pains. However, now I can see her little face because your big glowing face got near to her. And it does it like, but you back me up. Every time he puts his head back there, it's like the light kind of shines. Um, but I will say, since the weather has turned and it's nice and it's crisp and it's autumn like, I love that weather. And I love in the morning not getting out of bed, just snuggling under my covers and being perfectly like, warm, but knowing that it's also not warm. If I were to, move the cover, I would feel the cold air. And I love that feeling. So my aches and pains is really that I don't have any today that I want to talk about because,
That that feeling sounds wonderful. It's no longer warm in Boston, but it is 90% humidity, and it has been
oh,
90% humidity without fail since May the 4th. And the next 2 weeks, same thing. The lowest we're going to go is 85% humidity. So sure, it's nice and autumnal, except if you move at all, you're covered in a film of icky goo. I'm not going to ask for dry air. I'm not even going to expect it. But
right.
I have a weird ache or pain.
Okay.
I don't quite know what's causing it, but somehow or other, when I walk for any length of time, when I take the bean out for a walk or I go on errands, when I come back, the back of my right heel is covered in blood. The blood has soaked through the sock on my right heel. I have no idea what's causing that. All of a sudden, every pair of socks that I put in the laundry, one of them has a big red spot on it.
And you don't have any wound or blister or
I can't see much of
cut
what.
or sore or anything on the back of your.
No, there doesn't appear to be any kind of gaping wound or anything like that. I mean, you're more familiar with than a lot of my newer viewers will be. I have very little in the way of a sense of touch. So it's not like when I'm walking around, I'm being given a warning because of pain. I wouldn't feel that anyway. But something is happening with just that one foot. I'm
How can
thinking
it be
it must be
how
the
can it
shoe.
be bleeding though without you being able to visually see that there is something wrong with the back of your foot?
The back of the foot, right? You'd think there'd be a big cut or abrasion back there, but as far as I can tell, there isn't. Uh, I'm assuming it has something to do with the shoe. That either the shoe is too loose or too tight. It's got to be, right? It can't just be. I mean, if it had to do with me, then both ankles would be bleeding. Both Achilles tendons would be bleeding, not just one.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, if you had some sort of wound, but it's odd that you can't see anything.
Well, I'll have my surly houseboy give it another look.
Yeah, you're gonna have to.
But that brings us to my books, and my books is a fraught subject because last time you got a lot of recommendations. Did you look up any of those recommendations?
I did, and I filed like a lot of the books I own, but they're in Boston. So the next time I go down to Boston, I'll poke around in the apartment and hunt some of them down. Um, a couple of them, well, I asked you about maybe finding Jamaica Inn for me, because that seems to be out of print,
Yeah,
which is strange, but
weirdest thing. I know
um,
it'll turn up at the Brattle. I know that it will.
um, and and there were a couple I hadn't really heard of, and I made a note on Goodreads, to to keep it in mind. So when I'm out at the local bookstore, because we actually have a local bookstore, it's just a matter of getting out to it. It's not that far away. It's like about a mile, but when you're kind of stuck at home, you
You're
can't
not
really.
allowed to leave the compound. A mile?
Yeah,
How many times you could get impregnated in a mile? That's
but
not
hey,
happening.
we're in Maine. Things happen. Um, but um, and so, oh, going back to the Amazon thing. So what I do with books is I always check with this bookstore first, and if for some reason they don't have access to the book, um, or the book is out of print, I don't know what don't have access to it means, but they told me they didn't have access to something, and then Amazon had it, so at regular price. I mean, so it wasn't like used or anything. It was a new book. So I don't know exactly what that means, but their distributor probably didn't have it or was out of it at that moment. But if it is like out of print or they're unable to get it, then I go to Amazon. But like a lot of other stuff, you know, non-book related stuff, it's Amazon. So
Oh, has anything taken root? Any book?
well, I do have a book that. So I finished the post the postcard. That was the one you sent me by the French author, based on her family's history about the Holocaust. Her grand her grandmother, her grandmother's siblings and parents were killed in the Holocaust, and I really liked it. I forget the author's last name. The first name was Anne, and the last name began with B. And I should have prepared by looking it up for you guys, but it's called The Postcard. It's very it really pulls at the heartstrings at the end. It's very well done. It's not like cheesy pulling at the heartstrings, but I ended up in tears. So I finished that, and I'm still reading The Sylvanians. But I started. Do, 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 do. Can you see that?
Look at
The
that.
Celebrated Cases of Judge D.
Where did you get
And
that book?
probably the Brattle. It's obviously used. Um, I would say I got it from the Brattle, or you got it from the Brattle and gave it to me at some point. I don't know. But for those of you who don't know, it is translated by Robert Van Gulik, and it's called The Celebrated Cases of Judge D. And it is a translation of a 18th century Chinese mystery. I think 18th century Chinese mystery about Judge D, who solves 3 crimes. And I've listened to it on audiobook. I borrowed it and downloaded it from the library. And I've listened to it on audiobook a couple of times, but this is my first time reading it, and I'm very much enjoying it.
Oh, good.
So,
So in terms of recent hits, that's a couple of murder mysteries, right? The Phoebe Atwood Taylor was also a hit.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I do like mysteries, but that's not the only genre I like. And I did notice a lot of the recommendations by your viewers were also mysteries, so that was cool.
Well, mysteries tend to do it, right? Even if you're in a slum. they're the thing that's likely to do it. They're
And
just so involving right away. They pull you in right away.
right. And the interesting thing about this particular book is, other than just the book itself, is I never really read introductions to books because normally they end up telling me something I don't want to know. But I read the introduction to this by the translator, and it was worth reading even on its own, like unconnected with the actual book. It was worth reading because he talked about Chinese mysteries and how Chinese mysteries are very different than Western mysteries. Like they have a different um, narrative style, and I found that to be very interesting.
That
As
author wrote a whole bunch of murder mysteries starring Judge Dee.
I have I saw that, but I like the fact that this is, something that was not written by him, that it was merely translated, and it was written. They don't know who wrote it, so that's what I've been up to.
Well, I've only got one book for my books. I had a stack, but then I thought I always overdo it when we do this. You
Oh,
talk
go
about.
ahead and overdo it.
I've only got the one. I don't have. I just realized I don't have the finished copy, so you don't get to see the cover. This is Hunting the Falcon by John Guy and Julia Fox. This is not what it's going to look like. It has a blue cover with a white
I would
falcon.
hope not.
No, this is about. It doesn't even have the cover on the back. It's just a big book about Henry VIII's courtship and wooing and
Ooh,
marriage to Anne Boleyn. It's
ooh,
about Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. There's a lot of time on.
not where I thought it was going to go from the title. I thought
No,
it was going to be a nature book.
no, no, it's not a nature book. No, it gives a lot of emphasis to, can we figure out when he first saw her, when he knew her, what he knew about her? Can we divorce all of that material from all of the romance and whatnot, the pathos and drama that has grown up around it, and
So
figure,
it's not a novel. It's a
no,
it's
it's
a
history. John Guy is a famous historian, and
oh,
Julia.
okay.
So no, it's a history of what we can know about one of the most fateful courtships in English history. When did Henry first know the name of Anne Boleyn? When did he first know that a person like that existed? Did he know it before he started sleeping with Anne's sister? Did he know it
Hmm.
while Anne was still at the French court? Did they know each other when they were younger? Would they have ever met when they were, teens or kids? And then goes from there. For then the story gets
Well,
far more.
he was older, so
Yeah.
right,
So
he was older than she
yeah,
was by a significant amount,
a
right?
significant amount, by enough of an amount so that there was all sorts of gossip that before he slept with Anne, and before he slept with Anne's sister, he slept with Anne's mother, and also a little bit of fugitive speculation that maybe the reason that he couldn't conceive a child with Anne is because Anne was his own child.
But he conceived multiple
Well, right,
children.
right, but there's a name for a medical condition where if in some cases consanguinity can cause stillbirths. I forget it. The book goes into it in detail on some of the reasons why so many of Henry's wives couldn't conceive, and except after the first time. They all conceived the first time.
Right.
Then no. I, I, the medical judgment seems to be that it was Henry's fault. That it was some sort of, I don't know how that would
But
work. But uh,
was Mary Henry's first daughter with Catherine? I thought they had a son before Mary.
yeah, they did. They had sons and daughters. Well, two sons and at least one daughter that we know of, all of which died, born dead or died within the month. Mary's the
No,
only one.
but before Mary was conceived.
Right, right.
So that blows the theory of the
Unless Mary wasn't his.
firstborn. I I I don't believe that at all. You're talking Catherine of Aragon. I don't think she would have ever strayed.
Well, would she have needed to?
What do you
Would
mean,
she have
would she have
needed
needed
to?
to?
Would what if after the first disappointment, the boy, young Arthur, who lived for a month, all of London was drunk on free wine. Everyone was expecting the most, and then he died. What if the powers that be behind Anne or her retainers thought, well, let's be sure. Let's be absolutely sure. I mean, they whisk the baby away, they hand it back to her once she wakes up. I don't know. There's all sorts of byways. This book doesn't go into those byways. We did because we're dirty old people. But
So what you're saying is that Mary was unconnected with either Catherine or Henry, that
well,
they were
no,
not her
no, no,
parents.
no, no. I'm saying that she was their natural daughter. But there has been speculation for centuries that Henry was never, in fact, able to conceive a legitimate heir. That he was never, in fact, able to conceive at all. And that every single time we have any instance otherwise, it's an old switcheroo. that
Um,
that's at the
that's
heart.
flat Earth talk right there, Steve.
That's what?
Flat Earth talk. I mean, Henry was leaving bastards all over the place. So what was the point of those children?
Well, I think the thing that gives the speculation all kinds of fuel is that there's legitimate grounds to think that the Boleyns, the Howard family, did try that with Anne Boleyn. That there's legitimate grounds to think that they were desperate for anything, because by the time Henry and Anne were 2 years into their marriage, I mean, in court, the testimony was that he could no longer please a woman, that he could no longer do it. So Elizabeth,
By which
yes,
wife? By which wife?
by Anne Boleyn. The testimony at her trial was that he was marginally capable of getting a child, and that was Elizabeth, but that after that he was not.
Yeah, I don't know. I do not believe such much.
So
I
if you don't believe, well, you'd be crazy. I think you'd be crazy to believe it with Elizabeth, since she looks like a Tudor. So, if Henry didn't, then who's the Tudor donor here? Is what you'd want to know. But what about? Are you willing to go even further? Are you willing to extend the clemency to Jane Seymour? So you think a very old and pus-ridden Henry was able to legitimately father King Edward? Little
I don't
teenage
think he
boy.
would have been that old, Steve, when Edward was born. He died when he was like 55, and that was, you
Oh,
know,
he was much older.
multiple wives into the future.
He was much older than Jane Seymour, and
Yeah.
he could barely walk. He stank. He
Um,
he talked about unnatural practices. So,
I suspect many a baby has been born from a father who couldn't walk and stank. There are ways.
okay, well, uh, this book does. I should stress this book doesn't raise any of this salacious gossip. It's just really good. This year has been good for Tudor fiction or Tudor history rather. There's some pretty good things and a couple more coming down the pipe, which is great since last year was really bad for Tudor nonfiction. And we're gearing up for nonfiction November, right? On BookTube, Deb? Nonfiction November.
It's coming up. I bet
First,
you haven't. Well, you always tend to read a lot of nonfiction
oh yeah,
anyway.
tons of it. There's
Yeah.
tons of it coming out in November. Even
So
if I,
nonfiction November is just a November to
it's
you.
just in November for me, even if I restrict myself to just new releases and no rereads, new release nonfiction in November is going to be enormous. But what about October? Are you going to join BookTube for Victober? Celebrating all things Victorian? You like a
I
good romp in Victorian times, don't you?
I I love Victorian literature. However, I'm wondering if right now is not a good year to do it because of my limited attention span. And Victorian literature takes just a little bit more effort than, you know,
Yeah. Yeah, it was
Um,
there was no smartphone.
um,
You were expected to pay attention to a long book.
that I think, smartphone I think is a big problem because I sat down with Judge D the other night and I started reading, and then I thought, wait, what's this about? I'll just quickly Google it. And I was like, no, no, you have to just move on. Like,
Now
read
that's
like
deadly.
read like pre-smartphone days,
Right. You remember what
where
it was like to read.
if you didn't know what something was referring to or what a word meant, unless you got up and looked in your dictionary, um, or encyclopedia, because we actually have an encyclopedia in this house from like the 60s. Um, it's funny because for a long time I did not know that Queen Elizabeth had 4 children. I only thought she had 2 because in the encyclopedia she had only had Charles and Anne.
Yes.
Anyway,
Yes, we had
um,
an encyclopedia set in our old home too that in the volume under M it said it finished the entry by saying someday mankind may walk on the moon.
so I love that. I love that we have that old encyclopedia. And I've thought of like picking it up and browsing through it and reading like, little sections of it just for the fun.
No,
Um,
but pairing off like that when you're reading a book, that's deadly.
yeah, no, and I've had to specifically say to myself, no, because if you stop now and you pick up your phone, you are not going to go back to the book.
Yeah.
Something in, if you look up on Wikipedia some, person mentioned, then you're going to link to some other person mentioned in the Wikipedia article, and you're going to, it's going to be 3 days later and you will not have picked up Judge D.
One of the many
So,
reasons why I like an e-reader, because you're not really effortlessly connected to the internet, but you can long press on something that you don't really get
right,
in context, and it will just serve up what you need to know. You won't be going to the internet. It'll serve
right,
up right there on the screen so that you can just keep going.
right. Well, and that's good for words you don't know.
Yeah.
Because it bothers me if I'm reading and I come across a word I don't know. It bothers me.
I imagine that would bother me too if it had ever happened,
Yeah. Oh, Steve, Steve,
but
Steve.
it doesn't ever happen because I know all the best words.
Yeah, you do.
So before we wrap up, I have to ask about that David Attenborough style wilderness behind you.
Yeah,
Does that area behind you that we're looking at all the way to the tree line, does that completely fill with snow in the winter?
yeah.
Hmm. And
Why
then
wouldn't it? I don't understand why it wouldn't.
I don't know what kind of winters Maine gets.
Oh,
Massachusetts doesn't get winter anymore, but you're farther north. So
yeah,
you
we had a good amount of snow last year. A
so after
decent
a
amount of
fresh
snow.
snowfall, when you have a snowstorm overnight, then you can see fresh deer tracks. They come out on the fresh
Oh
snow.
yeah. Oh yeah. And you
Hmm.
could see them last year. It almost looked like a bike track. And I was desperately trying to figure out what the heck. And then one of my brothers said they're walking along grazing and they're just dragging their leg through the snow because they're walking slowly grazing. So they're not picking their foot up and moving it forward and putting it down. They're just kind of like shuffling a little bit as they graze, and it's making a straight track.
But you're not ever tempted to go back to that rush of trees back there and see if you can find a wallow or
Well, my mother has. My mother's found where they bed down out there.
yeah.
I I have not been back there in that clump of trees, um, probably since I was a kid.
Oh my,
And
I'd be back there every day.
we, as kids, we had bike trails past, back there, and we were always back there, like building forts and climbing trees and doing stuff. But now I'm too afraid of like ticks and stuff dropping on me. I don't I don't want to go back there.
It's not the Amazon, you know. It's just
Well,
a tiny bit of
that's how my mind treats it. It's not even that deep. Like the trees don't go back that far. Like it's not like there's a huge giant forest back there. It's a
I wonder.
house lot.
I wonder if
Like,
you have owls. You have
oh,
owls.
I'm sure there must be.
Well, you have crows and you have deer. You should have owls.
Yeah, I'm sure there must be. We've seen a fox
Oh,
running
okay.
around back
If you
there.
have a fox, then you have voles and rats, which means you definitely have owls. I just wonder where they are and what kind they are.
Um, and we've seen turkeys. There was a, not for a few years, but there was a large flock of turkeys that were hanging around for, a year or two. Um,
I'm seeing a turkey in that yard right now.
oh, hush your little self.
Don't say hush your little self in front of my booktube followers. They worship me with awe and trembling. The last thing I want them to hear is you say hush your little self.
All right,
Had
booktube.
to do that themselves.
Every time Steve gets out of hand from now on, just say hush your little self.
Well, let's wrap this up before we get caught in mid-sentence.
All right. Yeah, we
We'll
don't want to
try
do
to
that.
do Manatee Monday again next week.
We will try. And now hopefully I will have finished Judge D.
Yeah. Do you want, before we wrap up, do you want them to continue recommending books?
Oh, recommend away. I'll take all recommendations.
Yeah. It's it sounds like a lot of them are actually food for thought. That's great. So
We have
let's
Spooky
hold
Cover coming
recommendations
up. I like to read spooky stuff during like gothic kind of spooky, not, slasher kind of spooky. I like
Okay.
reading.
So atmospheric
Yeah.
gothic stuff.
Yeah.
Free to
Yeah.
bombard them.
I
But
like
anyway,
I like that.
all right,
What?
let's wrap up this
All
recording
right.
before we get cut off.
All
So
right.
we'll see you all next time, BookTube.
Bye, YouTube.